So let's try it again with our fourth type, size. Circle, circle, square, circle. That was our previous element, our previous setup. What if we do this? Now we have three tightly grouped elements with one dramatically different square. We've changed the color, the shape, the position, and the size of this element. And as a result, we're starting to get a very, very great sense that this thing is just completely different. It feels like it has almost no relationship to these other items in the group. And that's with four types of repetition in these and four types of contrast in that element. We can go further. Let's try orientation. Orientation, we're going to have to use a little bit different diagram because, of course, circles don't have an orientation. No matter how you twist them, they're still a circle. But let's take a group of squares again. And let's imagine that we have made some changes to our element. Maybe we've changed its color. Maybe we've even changed its size a little bit. We can do this. Even changed its shape a little bit. What orientation tells us is that if we rotate the object, we're also creating a sense of difference. All three of these have the same orientation, horizontally and vertically. If we rotate this one, we're creating another type of repetition among these three, a strong sense of connection, and a new type of contrast, a new type of difference for this element. So far we have color, shape, position, size, and orientation. The last is what we call texture or pattern. And texture and pattern are slightly different kinds of things. Pattern is something you can draw fairly easily. So for instance, let me just erase here. If I make elements like so, I'm trying to group them together, I can draw a pattern in one as simple as this. So patterns tend to be things like geometrics, lines, squares, squiggles, things that can be drawn, polka dots. That's pattern. Texture is something that, even in 2 dimensions, feels more like you could touch it. So if, for instance, you had a photograph of some grass, and you overlaid that photograph of grass, say, onto your image, you would get a sense of a kind of feel to the object or a feel to the element. The other thing that people generally say about texture and pattern is that textures tend to be non-repeating. They don't have an order to them particularly, whereas patterns tend to repeat and give a sense of order to a design. In both cases, though, texture or pattern, both of them create contrast. So if you want to repeat, you would do the same texture or pattern across elements. And if you want a sense of contrast, you would change the texture or pattern. So this gives us 6 different ways of creating a sense of repetition where sameness equals relatedness, and 6 different ways on the other side of the coin of creating a sense of contrast where difference equals unrelatedness, or not being in the same group. Another thing that we need to know about repetition is that it comes in basically two varieties. What we would call internal repetition and what we would call external repetition. Internal repetition is repeating elements within one document or one sort of fixed object. So an easy way to think about this is within one document. A document could be a book. It could be something large like a book or an encyclopedia. A document could be a web page. A document, however, would not be something like a whole website, because that's where external repetition comes in. External repetition is repeating elements across documents. With external repetition, the idea is that, let's say I produce 10 flyers over the course of a year for the company I work for. And each flyer, I want to have basically the same format. I want it to use the same logo from the company. I want it to use the same font. The idea here is that by creating external repetition, over time, when people see more and more documents that are produced with the same sets of repeating elements, they'll get a sense that those documents are connected to a particular company, a particular work site, that those documents should be grouped together as a whole set of work. So external repetition helps us across documents. Internal repetition is mainly used inside a document where we want people to get a sense of the cohesion or the coherence of that individual document. So internal to itself, we want headers and titles and paragraph spacing and other kinds of elements to be repeated in terms of their color, shape, position, etc. So it's important to think about both types, internal within a document and external across a set of documents that we want to be related.